I think Luang Por often taught consciousness is the escape hatch. That's the way he would teach. So when things become conscious and they're known objectively rather than being the subject of them, that's the most important bit. When I am the subject of this sense of vulnerability, then I just think subjective thoughts and what's going to happen, and I'm not really aware. I know it's happening, but I'm not truly aware in a Buddhist sense. I don't know it as a sankhara. Hence, like Luang Por Sumedho's book, Don't Take Your Life Personally, that kind of thing. So then the vulnerability comes up in some situation. Now I have enough experience and practice. I mean, it's a kind of probably more part of the, when you're a graduate a bit, it's more like PhD work, maybe, I don't know. Beginners maybe wouldn't understand that, but you've seen this before. And you have a kind of, no, I really want to look at this now. I have thought the patterns again and again and again, and somehow it keeps repeating itself. And then I do that kind of exploration, which you're talking about. And the exploration is more like an allowing, a curiosity, rather than trying to fix it. So if you take it to the Four Noble Truths, the Four Noble Truths is that something unpleasant arises. I don't like the unpleasant. I try to get rid of the unpleasant, and I'm stuck in desire. So that's the pattern of Four Noble Truths, which we call vibhava tanha, the desire to get rid of. And if I don't, that's what I was saying, that's what you have to diagnose in terms of what's going on. Once I've done that, I say, well, no, I'm not going to get rid of this now. And that's where like practices of loving kindness are very important, because they create a background where you begin to accept all things, reject none. And then one day you kind of feel this vulnerability. As an example, there might be many things. And you just stay with it. You stay with the heart, and the mind wants to go and rationalize it or analyze it or judge it or do something, or it wants to go off and distract. No. I think I'll really stay with this now. And you endure the unendurable, or you witness that which is difficult to witness. And in that witnessing, the habit, the karma, the vipaka karma of that gets liberated into consciousness, and it realizes it like the end of its lifetime, because all these things are impermanent. They're created by causes and conditions, and they arise because of causes and conditions. And we think that, well, the way I can sort this vulnerability out is just be strong, or to some extent, yeah, but it keeps coming back. And so then I say, well, I'm just going to trust in awareness. And this was where Luang Por Sumedho's constant reference now, trust in awareness, trust in awareness, trust in the heart. And then you trust in it. Now then the experience is unpleasant. It's not pleasant, it's because we're not here for the pleasant. Otherwise you'd do something else. So now you bear with the unpleasant. And it's kind of similar to like learning to meditate, and you feel restless and you just don't move. Not out of a forced sense, but you think, I'm just going to try to be still. And that restlessness, you realize, is actually quite shallow. And you settle, and your mind settles into quietness, right? Now you take the same kind of model or pattern, and you apply that to something like vulnerability or fear, or anxiety, or that as an example. And now you bear witness to that. And as you bear witness to that, trust in awareness, trust in the heart, trust in awareness. You keep reminding yourself, feel the body, whatever. It might go through you, might be a day of horribleness, might be an hour of horribleness, maybe 10 minutes. And it goes through you, and then it's gone. And then you have peace. Now, it might return. But its amplitude, its strength, its repetition, its weightiness is now very much attenuated, and you have confidence. You have confidence that even this awareness can handle. And you can see how some of these things might only come up when you're 77. Why do they have to come up in your youth? You don't, because they can be very, very, it's coming from something that happened when you're 10 years old, you don't even remember. And you never get a memory of it, but there is some knot in there. So when it arises, if a person has the wisdom, say, and confidence and experience and so on to know it as an object, then it's great, not great and fun, but in terms of like liberation of the heart, it's very, very important. So like if you're doing yoga nidra and you're exploring the heart and just getting an intuitive sense of abiding there and let that take care of itself, then if something comes up in ordinary life, you have the background, the kind of proficiency of, oh, let's go to the heart, right? Might be anger, it might be self-doubt. Like a lot of people have strong self-disparagements. So it's a cultural thing. I don't know what it is, but self-disparagement comes out. Like I'll speak to some people, and I'll say, they kind of talk to me about their self-disparaging habits. I'll say, you're a really fine person. No, I'm not. You're a really fine person. No, I'm not. And it's kind of like they weren't expecting the compliment. And then I see the reaction. Ah, okay. You're really strong. You really believe in self-disparagement, so much so that when I say you're a fine person, you can't bear it. And I say, so what's that about? And then I say, rationally, you're moral, you're a good person, trying your best, and you just gave me a chocolate bar. I mean, what else would you want? And then they wake up to that. They say, oh, why would there be such a strong reaction there? I said to one person, I said, you teach me as much as you think I teach you. What? No, I don't know. That's not possible. Whoa, why not? Where's that reaction coming from? And so sometimes needn't be that way. But also, I think as you tune into the heart and trust and awareness, also the more petty kind of repetitions of thought, which aren't so dramatic, you begin to disassemble those too. Just the kind of little whinging, the little kind of minor complaining and, oh, I'm getting old, or, this kind of endless dirge of self coming up. And rather than substituting that, oh, I feel wonderful, which doesn't work, right? You just say, wow. Yeah, and what where you pop the bubble of delusion is when you see this as a self-manufacturing thing. Ahimsa Mimamsa, like a self thing coming up, and you just notice that, oh, that's self-making, and the bubble pops. And there's maybe no huge emotional thing, but there's clarity again, and trust in the heart, trust in the heart. So some of it's seemingly very trivial work. And some of it's very profound. But you could see how if you're abiding in the heart in a way of repetition, like, I always recommend a really strong morning practice and really like do it. And then you imagine, like, if you've done yoga nidra in the morning and you've stayed awake and you've done an hour and a half, really invested some time, if you have the time, then that's going to be powerful through the day. And if these kinds of things come up during the day, then they become very valuable because now you've got a strength to notice their uprising, not identify with them. They have a chance to be liberated from consciousness. Whereas if you don't have that grounding in a practice, then of course they just sort of beat you up again, and then you survive and then kind of get on with it. So yeah, I think that you just got to keep going till you die. There's no let up in this, and not to think that if you've been practicing for a long time and something comes up that there's anything particularly wrong. I think you're just kind of more mature, available. It's timing, this kind of thing. And also, who knows, like physiologically what's going to go on. Like my memory is like shot. It's pathetic. Like, what did I say the other day? I said March the 7th, right? You said it twice. Why would I say March? Who knows? So stuff's going to fall apart. It is falling apart. But awareness, awareness, oh, this is what it feels like to be an idiot. Whatever you want. Well, me and Pablo are constantly comparing notes on losing memory because we're trying to think of a tree or an old musician we heard, and we kind of know who it is. So what's the word? But that's nature, isn't it? It's just in the nature of things. And you could see how you could create a self around that. I am someone who's losing my memory. Well, yes and no. Yes, in terms of, the memory function is not as great as it was, but is the awareness? The awareness seems to be, know that, it knows that. So I think the heart, as I was saying last night, the heart is a place of fulfillment. You do feel like this language I just used, affection with the beloved. There is the beloved in our life. I mean, to some extent, that little wren outside my window, which is nesting, and now it's a house wren, little bird, that's a beloved thing, isn't it? And nature has the beloved if we're kind of open to it. So the more I think we abide in the heart, the natural beauty of the world presents itself in a way which is uplifting, but then also the horribleness of the world presents itself as compassion, I would say. Kind of, not that one needs to go there very much. It's some pretty heavy duty stuff out there. Yeah? Any other questions? Please, yeah. Yes, Chandra. Mm-hmm.
Listening to the heart concept, I read about the feeling, emotion, compassion, and I'm not sure how do I.
Well, it's a good question. Well, use what works well for you, right? And then in the way you say relate to your husband, the way you relate to the sense world, contemplate how that relationship can be enhanced by abiding at the heart rather than the head. When you relate with people and you connect with intellect and thought, that's one way of connecting, which is in analyzing and judging and so on. When you connect to the heart, and the thinking mind is empty of thought, so there is emptiness of thought, then you have a very interesting way of relationship, which is spontaneously appropriate to time and place, that sometimes intellect isn't so good at. Now, you must be doing that with your husband already, and your heart understands him intuitively and so on. This is maybe just enhancing that and contemplating, like when I relate to someone, like if you're in a group meeting, say, and you have 6 people in the meeting, and all the opinions are coming out. Okay, we should do this, we shouldn't do that. Notice how people who are very opinionated have to jump to an opinion. And like if you're abiding with the heart, you'll find you don't need an opinion because you found rest in the heart. You don't need to go to intellect. And then quite often a response to the situation can come from the heart. So I think it's a way of balancing intellect. But in the end, I think the feeling of emptiness and the feeling of love in the heart goes beyond the heart to a kind of fusion of love. And the mystical traditions certainly speak of that, if you read that. So I would say, if it's interesting, explore it. If it's not, stay with what really works for you, because you have your skills. But I think it's a worthy exploration, because we are encouraged to develop the Brahma Viharas in a profound way. So it's unbounded, boundless. So sometimes we relate boundlessness more to um, upekkha, equanimity. It seems to me upekkha, because the other three are there, is also a heart sense. It's not just blank of that. So the four Brahma Viharas, like boundlessness and openness and emptiness. So there is a place there where it can seem like the heart is the foreground, and it is in some sense. But I find if you enter into that, then it starts to inform the background in some way. I mean, it's hard to explain for me. So when you have a question like that, I think that is a profound question, which doesn't really, I don't think it gets answered with the intellect. It gets answered with experimentation. That's my own spiritual development has always been through intuition. I mean, I've read a lot, certainly, and I've been very blessed by incredible teachings coming, but there's always been a sort of, what was that about? And it's sort of kind of has its own importance, and that a teacher can't describe for you. You have your own intuitions. So if intuitively it feels interesting, then pursue it. But if it's just something that I'm manifesting, that okay, then don't worry about it. Yeah, because the way we teach, it's a reflective teaching. It's not a dogmatic teaching. It's not doctrinal in that sense. The kind of list thing that exists. This is more like a fellow who meditates, trying to just say, well, this is what works for me. Does it work for you? That kind of thing. Yeah. Yes, sir.
The way I've heard a lot of teachers describing the meditation process is Vipassana and Samatha,
Samatha, yeah.
and they're kind of one or the other. And it seems like kind of a dualistic approach. You mentioned earlier Vipassana not as a practice, but as an insight.
Right. So that comes from Burma. Really comes from the Abhidhamma, and it's a very complex etymology of where that came from. Not entomology, right? Etymology, have I got it right? Entomology is bugs. Etymology is words, have I got it? Okay, thank you. Get this all wrong. So, to explain all of that, it would take a while. So maybe I could just say that, so Vipassana gets taught as a technique. And then you get different Vipassanas being taught. So I won't name names. And I asked an American who teaches Vipassana, I said, why don't you call it Buddhism? And she said, well, you need a brand. Really? I don't know. Anyway, my teacher, Ajahn Chah, and from what I've seen in the text, Vipassana is not a word that's used all that much. It's much, 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 much more used now. And my Ajahn Chah would say, well, Vipassana and Samatha, like Vipassana usually gets translated as concentration, Vipassana is insight. But he said they work together. He would say, like, when you pick up a log, you get both ends. And that only makes sense to me, that if I understand my confusion, then my focus is going to be better. And if my focus is better, then I'll understand the confusion more. So I was never taught that separation. That was never part of my upbringing. And then after 5 years as a monk, I came to to England, and they were talking about vipassana. And, well, why don't you talk about Buddhism? What's the deal? And then I thought, well, okay, it was a kind of particular methodology. And that comes from certain scriptural references to samatha, and it's a very long Theravada argument. There were two monks, I'm told, one in Sri Lanka, one in Burma, that had a 10-year argument about those two words, sending little leaflets back, or however one did it in those days. So if a teacher is using the word vipassana, like any word actually, even the word Buddha, what you have to ask the teacher, how are you using that word? Because it's just a word, right? And so I might use the same word, but in a different way. And than another teacher. So you just say, so how are you, like, kind of like what you asked me in that sense. Even like the word Buddha is used differently in Tibetan Buddhism than it is Theravada. Certainly the word Bodhisattva is used differently in Theravada than in Mahayana. So you have to, what language are we speaking now? But for me, it's just kind of very simple that way. So if there's focus, there's more chance for understanding. There's understanding, there's more chance for release from suffering. There's more release from suffering, there's more focus. And they kind of serve each other. Any others? Want to prime the pump for me? You know how to prime a pump? We don't use pumps anymore. Oh, okay, yeah. What's that?
There's no answer.
Oh, well, there you go. A freebie. So in terms of introspection is not just thinking about yourself. Thinking about yourself is thinking about yourself. Introspection is witnessing the inner world. So if I was talking to someone about doubt, this person who is a really infamous doubter, good friend, been seriously doubting now for 20 years, 30 years. And the mind just goes to doubt. And then, what should I do about the doubt? Should I do this or that? And I'm saying, well, you have to see doubt as an object, rather than be the subject who thinks they have to do something about the doubt. And you see the difference. Doubt arises, and then you deal with the doubt or whatever, and then it arises again. Oh, I've got a doubt problem. I need to deal with this doubt. How do I deal with this doubt, Bhante? Well, try metta bhavana. Okay, I'll do metta bhavana. Okay. But the doubt, I'm still doubting. I am someone who is doubting is avijja. That's ignorance. Whereas doubt feels this way is wisdom. It's that simple. And it's like the bubble of delusion gets burst. So let's say someone has, again, self-doubt. Am I really worthy? Did I do this right? I shouldn't have done that, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's doubt. Yeah, I shouldn't be doubting. No, doubt feels this way. Rather, I should be more mindful. I shouldn't be doubting. There's still a sense of I in there. That's not seen. If that's not seen, then the effort will still be to be someone who does not have doubt, which is still in time. Whereas the awakened mind is not in time. It's always here. It awakens to, oh, doubt feels this way. That's why I think Ajahn Sumedho's teaching is so brilliant right now, always has been, But if you listen to his talks, he's always just hammering away. It's like this. And then there's the silence. Whereas the self mind is always creating this idea that I have a problem and I have to do this, this, and that to go beyond my problem, which is time, which is birth. Whereas the liberation of the heart is always the timeless presence. So many practices which are, I think, authentically liberating would be practices of awakening rather than becoming. There's a difference between me trying to become someone who never doubts and awakening to doubt as an object. One who never has anger as opposed to awakening to anger. One who never has fear as opposed to awakening to fear. So it's not time-bound. And I think introspection, when it's done in a wrong way, is you're just always thinking about yourself. You know, what should I be doing to alleviate this problem? And it might be very wholesome thinking in a certain sense, you know, like it has a good intention behind it, but it can still very often be driven by what we call sakayaditi or personality view. I am someone who needs to become something. And the awakening to that, that's where the freedom lies. It's always very, very immediate. The habits can be very, very, very pernicious. They can go on and on. So do look at the difference between introspection in a unskillful way and then awakening because you understand your inner world. That's different. Yeah.
Yes, so just on that. So if you see, let's say, anxiety,
Yeah.
you see it as an object, and you're meditate with it, and it's not going away. Like you said, you know, when you leave it on, and then it'll go away. But if it's not going away, probably part of you is wanting it to go away, right? The craving is there.
Could be.
Yeah. But then, so just wondering if you have any suggestion that sometimes you can't figure out, but you think you're doing the objectives.
Yeah. Well, you know that suggestion I made, were you there at the talk Friday night?
Yeah.
Yeah. I said, maybe I have to step back and rather than welcome the anxiety, say, I hate you, anxiety. To really get in touch with what's going on. Yeah, the aversion. So you just, you know, you make it conscious, get out of my life. I've had enough of you, right? And then stop. Oh, this feels this way. You know, even that, because the delusion mind is so deluded, it'll, you know, trick you all kinds of ways. But probably just moving away from thinking about it. Just the kind of trusting in the body awareness, trusting in the heart chakra, and just maybe it is maybe it is like more an issue of trust. Just trust and awareness. Just trust. You know, maybe just a simple word like that. Just trust and awareness. Whereas the analytical thinking mind always has a kind of agenda of trying to sort this out. Maybe something just very, very simple like that. Trust. Trust and faith, like in a theistic kind of paradigm. You know, you have a kind of trust in God, whatever way you want to define that. And maybe it's easier in that kind of paradigm. In our paradigm, it's like you got to figure this out for yourself. Ain't no one going to do it for you, kind of thing. And then what do you trust in? You know? But if you see that awareness isn't like a personal thing, like knowing the sound of the sound, it's not a personal property. It's a universal possibility. So getting that as your trusting basis, just trust. And maybe I could suggest then get a word like that works, and just start to interject that rather than let the mind go into analysis and trying to figure things out. Maybe just trust, and then do that for a year. You know, you're like, seriously, this is quite often the case because these things are so insidious. And I'll just trust. So that's where you get like determination in a practice. Just trust. And then see what the result is. That kind of intuitively sound. That's what my intuition is saying. Yeah. Trust in God and keep your powder dry. Trust in Allah and tie your camel. I've always liked that one. Shall we do some, how about a bit of walking? Stretch the legs a bit? Yeah?